But what has happened in 2024 that this issue is so important to the BJP? What is this new information that the BJP claims it has received in the form of an RTI reply?
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். See, about this issue, I should tell you, our leader, Pradesh leader, Mr. Annamalai ji, has written a letter. He has sought RTA reference for this, and he has got a reply recently. And only after the getting the facts first time out, this has become a very big issue in Tamil Nadu mainly. As you rightly said, maybe other parts of India may not be aware of this, but this has got a national importance because every year hundreds of fishermen were shot dead by foreign militaries when they were going out for fishing. Our fishermen were under the opinion that they are within the Indian territory, but keeping this Katchatheevu into consideration, the foreign agencies like Sri Lankan military or any other agencies, they were objecting them to, they were telling that you have crossed border and you have entered into our territory. Because it's very, you have to understood, between India and Sri Lanka, this place, around 270 kilometers of square kilometers of a place, is there in between. And it was not used, nobody was living there, anything, but it was very widely used by fishermen. And a lot of special fishes were available in those areas. And all our fishermen used to go there, rest with their boat, dry their nets, and they were using it for generations. And all of a sudden, when this was given to Sri Lanka, they were getting into a lot of trouble. You see, only after the 2014, when Modi ji came to power, this of Indian fishermen has stopped. Until then, every month, I was a news reader earlier. Every day, I used to read this news. Indian fishermen were killed. Tamadaga Meena were suttukolai. Every day, this was hitting the headlines. Now only this is stopped. And DMK was claiming that we agitated only Congress. In fact, first time I am talking on behalf of brother Mohan. I'm supporting Congress because DMK was getting out from their alliance, and they said we objected. Only Indira Gandhi had given it. We were not knowing about this. We were unaware of this, and they were telling that now only the documents have come. They were hand in glove with the Congress government.
So what do you want now, Mr. Karunesh? What does the BJP want now to have Sri Lanka give it back? What is the realistic claim here?
It's not possible. It is not possible. I know it is not possible.
Yes.
And the government and learned scholars and lawyers, judges have to find some via media to use that place. Maybe we can take it on lease. Maybe we can do it. See, I am ignorant about it. I'm only a politician. See, my height and limitations, I know very well. Some learned people have to find out the legal possible matters to make that place available for our fishermen also. Because either earlier, both the fishermen were using it. The same status quo have to come back again with some other via media arrangement we have to make. Once given is given. But what I'm trying to emphasize in this media when we are discussing is, similarly, such act was taken by Madam Indira Gandhi to give away some place to Bangladesh or Pakistan then, in the same period of time. That time, people of West Bengal have fought very strongly and they have stopped that happening. But here in Tamil Nadu, DMK, for want of political advantage, they have gone into some adjustment with Indira Gandhi ji, and they kept silent about handing over.
Let me interrupt, but I need to open it up for the others, and let me bring in Mohan Kumaramangalam. Shrikant Karunesh says he's on your side, and in some ways he has a point, because your alliance partner, the DMK, with which you run the government in Tamil Nadu currently, they are the ones who've been making a noise over this issue much more than the BJP. So today, if you want to hit back at the BJP for playing politics with foreign policy, you'll have to first address your own partner. That's point one. Point two, what do you make of this issue suddenly hitting the electoral headlines, Mohan?
So that's a good question, Barkha. You said what has changed? Well, what's changed is the BJP has no issue to go to the public with in Tamil Nadu during these parliamentary elections. They're left at the altar with no real major partner. They have one partner in PMK who has a scattered vote bank, not one that goes across the country. And so they're searching for an issue which they can turn into an emotive issue That really hasn't really been an emotive issue since maybe 2009, when the Sri Lankan civil war was ending. So that's why they're bringing it up right now. It's a 50-year-old issue. Now, as far as fishermen being able to tie their boats, dry their nets, that was allowed actually under Article 5 of the 8 Article 1974 agreement. If you read that agreement, there is one very specific clause that says that there will be unfeathered access to the island. The Sri Lankans took it as meaning only that you could, dry your nets, you can't fish in that area. In 76, we actually got the Wage Bank, which is a much more richer fishing resource, about 1,000 square kilometers than the Katchatheevu. The Katchatheevu was given, you can't go back in history and question these decisions because they were taken in the context of the geopolitical implications of that time. We didn't want to leave that area alone. We chose to give it to a friendly neighbor and then took over the wage bank to ensure that whether it was the Russians or the Chinese or the Americans were not playing havoc in that, what was effectively international waters with no clear demarcation. We didn't cede anything because there was nothing to cede. The border had been disputed all the way from 1921. This, as you mentioned in the opening remarks that you made, is part of an RTI that was answered from the foreign ministry when the now foreign minister was foreign secretary then. It says categorically that nothing was ceded. So this is an issue, it's being made into an issue only because the BJP does not have any issue to go to the public with. As far as what can be done, frankly, we just extended $1 billion credit line to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has been in bad financial shape now for the last couple of years. There was no reason why we couldn't bring Katchatheevu into the conversation, at least to lease it. If we believe that that is the sole reason why Indian fishermen are getting killed. And I want to dispute a fact that he brought out here, which is that from since 2003, as per official records, about 6,500 fishermen were arrested, and half of those have been arrested in Mr. Modi's last 10 years of tenure.
Okay, before we get into which government has done what for the fishermen, let's actually stick to the issue of Katchatheevu. And as a Punjabi, my friends in the south must forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it and massacring the pronunciation a little bit. I'm trying hard here. But Ambassador Ashok Kanta, I must bring you in here. This politicization of foreign policy is something diplomats have warned against. You yourself have given comments to the Hindu, and I want you to expand on them as you look at this issue. The two RTI responses from the same foreign ministry on the same issue are quite different. In 2015, the foreign ministry says that Katchatheevu was neither acquired nor ceded. It was just Sri Lankan side of the maritime boundary, so to speak. In 2024, a completely different response is given. When you see this issue erupt into national politics, as a veteran diplomat, Ambassador, what do you say?
Well, Barkha, I don't want to wade into politics of the issue, but the fact remains that Government of India has maintained a fairly consistent position on this issue since the agreement was signed in June 1974. At that time, we agreed on the international maritime boundary line in that area. And as per that agreement, Katchatheevu fell just on the Sri Lankan side of the IMBL. Mm-hmm. And during discussions in Parliament at that time, and subsequently when we signed the supplemental agreement in 1976, I think this was maintained that on balance, it was felt that it's on Sri Lankan side of the IMBL. And in various comments made by Ministry of External Affairs in Parliament in replies to RTI queries, as also in affidavit made before the Honorable Supreme Court when this matter was taken up there. In 2013, for instance, it was stated that there's no question of ceding any territory because this was an area, as Mr. Kumaramangalam mentioned, which was disputed at least since 1921, and it was brought to an amicable settlement in 1974, read along with the supplemental agreement of 1976. So I think this position should be clear that it was part of diplomatic negotiations. By and large, we should not be reopening this issue because there is a continuity in our commitments as a sovereign nation, notwithstanding changes in government. And as you're aware, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee was in forefront of uh, opposition to 1974 agreement. He spoke very eloquently in parliament at that time. But subsequently, when he was prime minister, I'm not aware of any attempt being made to cast doubt on the validity or even the fact that this agreement is a good agreement. And same position has been maintained by subsequent governments.
So you're a bit uncomfortable with the attempt to reopen it?
Reopening first is not possible to reopen this issue because there's no provision for revising or amending the 1974 agreement. But it's also a larger issue on positions we take as a sovereign nation in negotiations on issues of boundary and territorial integrity. For instance, you have two agreements with Bangladesh, one on land boundary and one on international maritime boundary. Land boundary, there was an exchange of enclaves, as you're aware, in July 2000, in 2015, under which actually we ended up giving a larger number of enclaves with a greater area to Bangladesh than what we received in return. But we didn't question that. No one questioned that. Likewise, I'll just make one more point. Likewise, on the maritime zone with Bangladesh, matter went to permanent court of arbitration, and the award which was given in July 2014 was largely in favor of Bangladesh, but we accepted it as a mature nation. So there is a maturity, consistency, continuity which has marked our diplomatic behavior, and we should not be deviating from that.
I think that last point is what I'd like to take to General Katoch, and then I'll come to you, Padma. General Katoch, governments come and go. Sometimes governments stay, and then other governments come. I think the point the ambassador is making is foreign policy has always been something where continuity has been preserved because it's the response of the nation state and not of government A or government B. As a military veteran, how do you see this debate?
Thank you, Barkha. Barkha, there are multiple ways in which this particular issue can be seen. I think we start off with the basic premise: can we carry out a change at this moment to the treaty which took place in 1974? No, I don't think we will. I don't think the Indian government will actually take up that course of action. But I think it is important to know why we actually went in that particular way. And there were some things which happened in 1974, which, as they have come out now, I'm not very comfortable with. And one of the things is, the reasoning which was given at that point of time, it's just a small piece of land and it doesn't really matter. It is not occupied. There's no habitation there. Now, I'm very uncomfortable with that line of argument. It may be just 285 acres of land. But the question is, we say, okay, it was not our land. Then was it Sri Lankan land? It is a disputed piece of territory. Why is it disputed? It is disputed from the Indian side because India feels it belongs to India. If India felt it did not belong to us, then there would be no dispute. I mean, am I saying Africa belongs to India? So there's no dispute. The dispute only comes in between two sides when both are claiming the same territory, which means that India was claiming Katchatheevu, right? It is Zamindari of Ramnad. It came under them, right? After that, onto Rameshwaram. Now, when we come down to 1921, again, when the dispute arose between the maritime boundaries, Katchatheevu remained in dispute. So the question is, we cannot say that it was not disputed. It was disputed because India felt post-independence, I mean, everything became India now this side. India felt it belonged to us and Sri Lanka felt it belonged to them. So if it belonged to us, then we presume it is our territory And it is not that territory for anybody to give away. It is something like giving away, today, if China claims Arunachal, there is no goodwill in saying we are going to give it to you. We are not going to give it to them. We're not going to give it to anybody. So this is my fundamental thing, which I think went wrong. Secondly, I think, when you look at this 285 acres of land, the small little island, which has one church, I think people are missing the bigger picture. The bigger picture is what happened in UNCLOS after that, From your territory, from your maritime borders, 12 kilometers is your territorial sea, and 200 nautical miles. I beg your pardon, I'm using the word nautical miles. 200, not 12 kilometers, 12 nautical miles is your territorial
Right.
sea.
I was
200 nautical miles is your EEZ. Now, obviously, the EEZ doesn't apply here because we are in such close proximity to Sri Lanka. But if you actually look at the map now, from Rameshwaram, it is just about 24 point some kilometers from Rameshwaram at this point. And from their island, which is the Delft Island, is about 20 kilometers. Now, if this was ours, then the maritime boundary which would have been drawn would have taken a different course. And I think that is something which we need to understand. We are not just talking of 285 acres, which even then, whether it is 1 acre or 285 acres, we must keep. We are talking of more than 200 to 300 square kilometers of sea territory. And I think that is something we have missed out on.
So realistically, it's not possible to turn the clock back, but practically, you feel that these facts are disturbing. Padma, the foreign minister who also addressed the media on this issue, has been in particular targeted by the opposition because he was foreign secretary when the foreign ministry gave a very different response in 2015. Mr. Chidambaram was among those who targeted him from what he called being I think he used the phrase liberal suave bureaucrat to now a politician. And it's true, Mr. Jaishankar today speaks as a politician. But the issue itself, do you believe, as Mohan argues, that it's been raised because of the absence of other issues in Tamil Nadu? Or do you have sympathy with Mr. Karunesh and General Katoch's position that there is, that there are disturbing facts? Or are you inclined to agree with the ambassador, just don't bring politics into foreign policy?
Well, I'd like to go back to Jaishankar and the PIL dated 27th of January 2015. This is just a playful reminder that at that time, Jaishankar was about to begin his tenure as foreign secretary. He technically began the very next day, that's on the 28th of January 2015. But to those people who are waving this, triumphantly in the air, I just have to say in Jaishankar's defense that he was then a bureaucrat, he's now a politician, and any bureaucrat goes by the dictates of the ruling government at that time. Now, having said that,
2015, it was the same. It was the same.
I'm coming to that, Barkha. So it's important to see what was the Modi government's relationship with Sri Lanka at that time in 2015. Just over a month after this happened, on March 13th, 2015, Mr. Modi made a first bilateral standalone visit to Sri Lanka by any PM since 1987. Please note, by any PM since Indian PM since 1987. Now, that visit, and I happened to be in Sri Lanka at that time because my book had just been published and was being released there. The visit generated a huge amount of goodwill towards India for the first time in literally decades, most of all because of its very supremely and superbly crafted itinerary. Now, everyone may not agree with the itinerary, but from the foreign policy point of view and from the neighborhood first policy point of view, it was very well crafted. What he did for the first time, which governments did not do before, is he focused and paid respect to the country's singular majority. His visit was a very refreshing change from all the earlier visits to Sri Lanka. He didn't make a beeline to Tamil Jaffna alone or to the upcountry Tamils alone. He, laid great emphasis, subtle emphasis on the Buddhism being the common factor, and he said it was a uniting force between the two countries, etc., etc. Now, this was Sri Lanka policy. Honestly speaking, I've covered the country for, as you know, 26 years through the civil war, and I traveled in the war. I was a war correspondent, and I can tell you that this was Sri Lanka policy at its best as far as India is concerned. Now, let's admit that Sri Lanka policy under the Congress-led governments, whether standalone or coalition, before Mr. Modi came, were an unmitigated disaster. And the blame cannot be laid on Tamil coalition parties alone, because traditionally Northern India has never been interested in what lies in the south, let alone Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was allied to the US while India was allied to the Soviet Union. Congress built up the LTT that was never forgotten by Colombo, and Congress then abandoned the so-called Tamil question altogether after the IPKF fiasco,
And
which was never
the prime
again,
and lost a leader at the
which
hands
was
of
never,
the LTT as well.
yeah, which was not forgotten by the Tamils. So, in fact, the Tamils of Sri Lanka, Barkha, as I've told you a couple of times on your show, when I've traveled, whenever I travel in northern Sri Lanka, they always say they laugh at what they see as interference by Tamil, both politicians in Tamil Nadu as well as in New Delhi. They say that they use us like the karve pullai. Karve pullai means a curry leaf. They say that Indian politicians, all of them, whether from Tamil Nadu or from New Delhi, throw us into a curry when we come in handy, and when they don't need us, they pull us out like the karve pullai. So having gained that mileage over several subsequent visits, because he went back several times after that, Mr. Modi, and given Sri Lanka's economic woes, as one of the speakers mentioned, given China's clutch on Sri Lanka, given the Maldivian lost cause, if you like, it's highly unlikely that Mr. Modi's government, if he returns to power, or any government for that matter, even if the Congress were to return to power, would be foolish enough to damage that goodwill, which was carefully built up
So
after
then
so
why?
many years of bad relations.
So then how do you
So,
explain?
so
How do
that,
you
yes,
explain? How do you
yes, that's
explain it then?
exact. Yeah, I was just going to wind down by saying that what I'm saying is that this is frankly a raking up a 45-year-old issue is a non-issue. So why the sudden demand? I see it as pure undiluted pre-election politics. And why not? It's the silly season. Every party is doing it.
Okay.